Hey, good afternoon. Billy and Jeff here with Crossroads Consulting. Today we want to talk about underwriting and why data is needed. That a lot of folks ask, why do you need that data? So, you know, in the past, we used to be able to just write proposals out on the tailgate, send it into underwriting. They'd ask us a few questions and we'd be all right with that and get it approved. These days, it seems a little different.
Well, think about it from this perspective. The PEO is acquiring your risk for workers' comp, your risk for health insurance, actually your risk for unemployment. So because of that risk component, they need data. Just think of it this way. I have a car. I need auto insurance. Call your local auto insurance agent and say, hey, get me some auto insurance coverage. I have a car. Well, we're going to need a lot of data and, the make of the car, the year of the car. No, I have a car. I just want insurance. Just give me a quote. It doesn't work that way. So it's all about the risk. How much risk are we, what are we buying, basically?
Right.
So yes, the days of just getting a quote, long gone. So, I remember a lot of people was, why do I need to show you my rates?
Right.
Well,
just give me your best rate and I'll let you know if it works that way.
Because your rates tell me to some degree what risk I'm acquiring. Right. You and I are in the same industry, but we don't necessarily have the same workers' comp rates. We don't necessarily have the same state unemployment tax rate.
Right.
You might be a problem employer and have a lot of claims, where I'm a employer of choice and I have very few claims. So my rate could be a lot lower than yours.
Yeah,
with workers' comp.
And hey, look, if your objective is to save money and get better services for less money, let us go to bat for you. Let us fight for you. Give us your invoice so we can compare. We may, at the end of the day, tell you you're in the right spot. Don't change. Stay where you're going to stay. And
that's where the dialogue comes into play, because there could be extenuating circumstances as to why your workers' comp rate is higher than mine, or your health insurance rates are higher than me, or your unemployment rate is higher than mine. Right. It could just simply be extenuating circumstances that the PEO, if that's where we're quoting, could actually look at those extenuating circumstances. Hey, you know what? This is actually a good risk. We're okay with discounting their workers' comp or discounting their state employment, blah, 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 because it makes sense. It's a good business. They had a stroke of bad luck.
I mean, just because we're brothers doesn't mean that we're the same risk, because I'm way more high risk than you are.
I'll second that. Absolutely.
So what we would like to do is to show you the data that is going to be needed, that we need to collect, or any other broker is going to collect in order for you to get a quote from a PEO. Okay, so we want to talk about all the items that are needed to get a quote for a PEO. And yes, I have my trusty M110 bat here with me, because this is what we use when we go to bat for you guys, during these proposals. So let's just kind of review this real quick, right? Because like I said, we're on your side, right? We need to take your data and be able to analyze where you're at so that we know whether we can get you a better program, better pricing, better services, better benefits. So it's all going to start with billing. Okay, if you're not using a PEO today, and let's just say you're using a payroll company, we want to know what your cost is for the payroll services that you're paying, so that we can include them into your analysis. If you are using a PEO, we want to get a current invoice. We also want to get a current invoice for January, beginning of the year. The reason being is because we want to know whether they're giving you the cutoffs for your unemployment. In all states, when you reach certain levels, in Florida it's 7,000, and some other states it's higher. When each employee hits that 7,000 in wage for the year, you no longer pay federal unemployment or state unemployment. So we want to make sure you're getting your cutoffs. Plus, we also want to know what you're paying, because we'll tell you whether you're in a great spot or not. With payroll, we're always going to ask for a current payroll register. That gives us an employee count, how many employees you have, and it also allows us to calculate roughly the annual wages. Now, some of these reports have the workers' comp code that the employee is on, which that's going to be important when we get to the workers' comp section. If you have a current labor distribution report with the PEO that you're with, that will be important for us to compare your employer costs. Okay. State unemployment tax filings, we'll want to know what your unemployment tax rate is. That's important because if you're at a 2.7, if we can get you lower, that's great. If you're at a 5.4%, we'll definitely be able to save some money. And then also it could go as low to 10 cents in some states, and we'll need to figure that in if we can't get that low, what that cost is. So it's always important to know what your unemployment tax rate is. Okay. If you come over here to workers' comp, now we're getting into a little bit more detailed areas, but we'll need your declaration pages. And usually it's the first 3 to 5 pages of your workers' comp policy. This shows us what classifications you're on, what discounts you've earned, what your experience mod is. Gives us the data that we need in order to complete the proposal. Now also, with the workers' comp, as I mentioned before on the payroll report, we'll need to know the number of employees per workers' comp classification. So most all businesses have clerical, which is code 8810. So you may have 3 or you may have 5 of them, or you may have 1. Then let's say you're in the electrical, I think, which is 5187 code. You may have executive supervisors, which is 5606. All of those codes have different rates. So we need to know all the different codes that you're in and how many employees you have them in, and then also what those annual wages are. Okay. Brings us down here to loss runs. Loss runs are extremely important. Now, we're going to need 4 years loss runs, including the current year. Okay. So this allows us to determine the risk. If you have no claims, that means you're a good, safe company. If you have one shock loss that's affected your mod, that allows us to determine, okay, it was a one-time incident. If you have a list of claims and there's a frequency issue, we need to know this. So one, if we can get you approved, we also can put some programs in place for safety, eliminate the frequency of these claims, and help provide a safer workplace for you. So the loss runs are important for us to get approval. Without them, we can't do it. Okay. And then a detailed description of operations. Okay. Just because you have an air conditioning company or a plumbing company or a construction company doesn't mean that you're the same as the guy down the street. So we need to know your description of operations, what you do, whether it's residential, commercial, whether there's any road hazards, whether there's DOT work, whether you're, going 30 stories up on a shell. We need to know a detailed description of operations. That will help us. One other thing I want to talk about with underwriting is the underwriters will go to your Facebook page, they'll go to your website, things like that. So if you have pictures of a 3-story pool cage and you really only do a 1-story pool cage, take that off of there because the height exposure is going to kill you, right? Which is one of the questions that we ask: height exposure, chemical exposure, driving exposure. These are all questions that get asked during our process. So we need to know that. If you're trying to make yourself look better and bigger with these pictures that don't reflect what you do, make sure you stay within your realm because your underwriters are looking at that out there. All right. Medical insurance, the 800-pound gorilla in the room. We're definitely going to need your current health plan summaries. Okay, that's showing the details of the plans you offer today, whether you have 1 plan or 3 plans. Each plan has its different deductibles and things like that. So we'll need that. We'll need the current health rates that go along with those plans. Okay. The next thing we'll know is if you're within 60 to 90 days of your benefits renewal, we will need to get those renewal rates. The carriers want to see it. The reason why they want to see that is if you've had a good renewal, like 7 to 10% or so, they know you have pretty much a good group. It's not high risk. If you have a 30% increase, they know that something's going on with the group, so they're going to rate it accordingly. And we can't get around this. This is the way health carriers are doing it today. They want to know what risk they're buying. Okay. So current health plans, current rates, renewal health plans, renewal rates. We have a census that we send out. This census will have all covered employees, dependents, name, date of birth, zip code. If you have anybody that's on COBRA, things like that, we'll send that out. It has to be all employees of the company, full-time or part-time, and we'll mark them out. Let's see. If you're currently with a PEO, we will need the current benefits report. So every PEO out there has a benefits report that shows who all is on the plan, whether it's employee only, employee family, employee spouse, whatever. If you're with a plan that's level funded, and you'll know if you're on a level funded plan, we'll also need all the claims data. Typically that's a claims report, a pharmacy report, and then a currently enrolled report. So these are all things that the carriers are going to look for. So don't shoot the messenger, right? We're just going through the steps in order to get you approved. 401k plan docs, we just look at that to compare your 401k to see if it makes sense to move it. You don't have to do that. But we look at plan fees, asset management fees, the types of funds, things like that. Do you have a safe harbor? Do you need one? Do you don't need one? So that really covers the gamut here with everything that is needed to go through underwriting, get you approved, and get you approved with a better scenario than you are today. Thank you. All right, so hopefully that last video analysis of the all the items that we needed to get an RFP through underwriting made sense. If it didn't, you can always look us up on our website, give us a shout out, and we'd love to walk you through the process. But typically you're going to be having communication with us before we even get to this stage. But just want to give you an example as to why we need all this data. It's a process, and we try to make it as streamlined as possible. And it's for the better to get you, in a better program with better pricing, if possible. Like I said, at the end of the day, we may determine that that's the best spot for you and stay where you are. And I know you had some things you wanted to add to
I wanted to offer up a final thought. You and I have obviously been doing this for many years, and we've worked with a lot of companies on this data accumulation process. This is a worthwhile exercise in going through all of this data. Some businesses that we've worked with, they've got it all readily available. Whether it's either a filing cabinet or they store the files electronically. This is going to be very helpful to you if you take this process and you collate all of the information, the workers' comp information, the health insurance information, especially your census, state unemployment filings, the workers' comp stuff, the loss runs. If you can collate that either in PDF format, which is probably the best way of doing it, man, it's going to make this process so much easier, because every time you go to market, everybody, whether it's PEO, whether it's open market, they're going to want the same information. So do yourself a favor. Get in a habit of updating your files. It really doesn't take that long. And the loss runs for workers' comp, you can call the carrier directly, and they will send that to you typically within 48 hours. Or your agent can provide that. But the claims history is really important. If you can get that frequently, that's going to give you some critical information as well that's ultimately going to impact the rates that you pay. So I know this is tedious, but it doesn't have to be year over year if you keep your files updated and the information updated as well.
Very good. So we'd love to take you through this process. Like I mentioned before, if you reach out to Crossroads at xroads.com, we can help you out there.